I currently do not know what my top 10 list is. I'm not really sure about the ordering, what games are up there, but to buy me some more time, I have Alexander to do his top 10 list.
I'm quite biased because I really like science fiction.
But is the core gameplay mechanic fun?
Yeah, it's the best opening play.
And trust me, his top 10 list is really, really good. So here it is. I get to put this game away. Bye-bye.
So my top 10 list is based off games that I want to play right now the most, and also games that I just love the most, kind of tied together. I tend to like games that are very long, that have a lot of complexity and a lot of strategy. I've been playing hobby board games for about 10 years. So to begin, number 10 is a game that is currently out of print. It is Star Wars Imperial Assault. So I am the forever DM or GM of my tabletop group. So playing as the Empire in Imperial Assault was kind of like putting on a very fine glove, very nice fitting glove. I do think the core game is marred by one side winning missions repeatedly, so it can sort of turn the game into a one-sided stomp. I find that the progression mechanics for both the Rebels and the Empire player, the way that they can both shape the narrative, makes the game just grand. Unfortunately, most popular tabletop role-playing games do not give instructions for the game master on how to actually play the game. So when I'm given instructions and also procedures to enact those instructions, I too can have fun. I do think Imperial Assault is a lot less refined than Frosthaven, but I really like the one versus many gameplay of it. I also much prefer the theme. The Rebel characters are all pretty interesting. They expand their uniqueness as they get more credits and more experience points in the form of items or abilities that they accumulate. And similarly, the Empire player also changes over time as they get more experience points too. And it's fun how you can play the exact same campaign, but if the Empire player is picking a different doctrine, the way you have to approach the campaign can actually be quite different. And I think that gives the game a lot of replayability. Unfortunately, the game, as mentioned, is out of print, so I don't know when I will ever be able to play it again. So number 9 is Twilight Struggle. We did a review on this game where I expound on my thoughts more, but suffice to say, this game is wonderful. I've played it over 40 times now, and every game is a blast. I do think that sometimes the randomness can mock your strategy, but I've never felt like it was unmanageable. And I also think that the game time can sometimes be hard to gauge. Yet, the theme meets gameplay perfectly. You can play as the USA, and you can change history. You can look longingly at your blue squares as they sit in Cuba, or Angola, or North Korea. Alternatively, you can laugh as you play the Europe scoring card, having painted all the battleground countries of Europe red on turn 2. And win the game immediately. It's a game that heavily rewards those who spend time with it and really come to understand its various intricacies.
Nay.
So number 8 is another out-of-print game. It is Chaos in the Old World. And I think Warhammer Fantasy is my favorite Games Workshop creation. And I think Chaos in the Old World is a really unique theme. You get to play as the Chaos Gods themselves. Yeah, that sounds great. Sign me up. My 2 favorite Chaos Gods are the Horned Rat and Tzeentch, the Lord of Change. And I enjoy how they are differentiated between one another and also with the other 3 Chaos Gods. I think this is theme meeting gameplay quite nicely. The gods, they bicker amongst themselves, sometimes in an alliance, sometimes in a state of total war. It changes like the winds. They're very fickle. The card drawing and the 2-card limit per region mechanisms, I think, really lead to this sort of opportunistic maneuvering between the various gods. I'm not quite sure that the game is balanced, but I think that's more so because the game cares more about theme than anything else. And frankly, I'm all for it. I think the game is super fun. It's always engaging. There's very little downtime. Everyone is basically constantly bickering amongst themselves. It's just a blast. So number 7 is, I'm kind of cheating a little bit. I put A Distant Plain and also Fire in the Lake, because in my head, these two games and also many other coin games are kind of all the same game. Which is to say, I think they're basically all fantastic. I started with Fire in the Lake, and I'd rather play that one more than all the other coin games, but only because I've played it fewer times than A Distant Plain, or as a friend of mine likes to call it, A Distant Pain. Coin is a complex system, but in my experience, I've always found when players get a very firm grip on the mechanics, they can really start to see the long-term future impact of their actions, and that's when the game really starts to shine. And every game plays out like a piece of history. I really struggle to think of other games that emulate a particular conflict in history as well as Fire in the Lake does. I would always want to play either of these two games anytime. I think the most fun I had with Fire in the Lake was playing as Arvin, the South Vietnamese government, because they interact with all the 3 other players all the time. And yes, coin games are long, and having more interaction between the other players will increase the game time, on top of the mechanics being complex. But as you may have noticed, I tend to like long games. For me, length doesn't really matter as long as there is something to really dig my teeth into in regards to mechanics. And Fire in the Lake is a game I could easily play another 20 or 30 times. My number 6 is Hegemony, which is a fantastic story generator. Every game of Hegemony I've played has always been really fun, or produced fun moments. It does take a long time to explain all the different mechanics in Hegemony, but the theme is so tightly interwoven with those mechanics that it needs to be as complex as it is to create a suitable emulation of the interplay between the various classes. The game always comes with a huge barrel of laughs, as all the classes are constantly fighting and screwing each other over again and again. Number 5 is Battlestar Galactica. I enjoy the show, and I also enjoy this game. I've spent many hours arguing over who is and is not a Cylon. I have frequently played with a player who would, to quote him, throw a bone into the mix, meaning he would pick a random player and throw them in jail, or throw them out the airlock. So suffice to say, I've never won a game of Battlestar Galactica as a human, and I currently have no physical copy, so the likelihood of that changing is quite slim. Still, it has been a long time since I played a social deduction game that gives you such crunchy mechanics that really add depth to the drama. So my number 4 is Star Wars Rebellion. I love this game. It reminds me of a game I played in my childhood, which was Empire at War, a video game. I like how both sides are kind of playing a different version of the same game. I think the theme meets gameplay in basically all aspects, from what leader is best at what mission to the production that each planet produces. The only thing I do not like about the base game is the combat, which I felt like lacked some agency with the tactic cards. With the expansion, both sides now have personalized tactic cards. So it makes combat feel more like a game of bluffing as you're trying to figure out what tactic card your opponent is going to play. And I've not been able to play Star Wars Rebellion in years, which is a shame because I adore it. I would really like to give this game another shot. And also, I wish it had another expansion. Maybe add in like a third faction, the Criminals, or maybe remake the game but in the prequel era. Yeah, that would be peak.
Dude, that would be like goated if you could play 3-player.
Yeah.
That would be insane.
3-player, one person plays as the crime syndicate, the Hutts.
That would be really good, yeah. And then you basically make it, they have their own win condition, so you're kind of playing like a constant Mexican standoff.
It it would just be Cuba Libre. But basically, instead of trying to like militarily control, they're trying to like control the markets of the planets. So they have their own control line that they go through.
But you still have the mechanic of placing leaders and
Yes.
missions, which
Yes.
is
Yes.
I think is
Yes.
such a good mechanic.
Yes.
It's such a good
It
spin on
is.
worker placement.
My third favorite game is Kingdom Death Monster. It's incredibly complex, it is brutal, and it is utterly immersive. I love the art, I love the graphic design of the game. I adore the emergent storytelling that comes out from playing the game. And you will be playing the game a lot if you want to play it seriously. Indeed, my only real complaint with the game is that playing it with 3-player or 4-player doesn't make the game any better. It actually just makes the game a lot worse. Unless I'm playing the game with someone who is as experienced with the game as I am with it, having done, 50 runs at this point, most of which die within Lantern Year 4 through 7 for one reason or another. The game just isn't as fun for me as playing it solo. It is certainly a niche game for a niche audience, and I'm absolutely the target demographic of the game. I love everything about it. I love the world building, how trivially easy it is for your characters to just die, and also the cycle of building up your gear, of slowly trying to revolt against the darkness. So I recently started a playthrough of the game with the Gambler Chest expansion, and it dramatically changes the game. I'm still reviewing all the little new content, but I like the variable Hunt XP booklet philosophies that really change how you view your survivors, because they themselves become a lot more important compared to the base game where it was more about your gear. It's probably the most complex game I've ever played, and I love it. I would play it all the time. It didn't take a lot of space and like 30 hours per game. So my number 2 is Arkham Horror LCG. I think the card-based nature of this game lends itself to telling a really unique narrative. One that is kind of player-driven in a game that is basically just a total railroad. It's almost like a stroke of genius what FFG has created with this game. Having cards be stuffed inside of a deck gives a sense of impending doom without relying on pure random chance like rolling a die would. There's lots of systems of randomness in Arkham Horror, but they're all extremely manageable because they're all really split up. From the encounter deck to your own deck to skill tests, and the way you can deck build to sort of tackle all of these different challenges. You can go for big numbers and just say, I don't care what tile I'm going to pull from the chaos bag, I'm just always going to pass the test. Or you can play a mystic who can just look at the encounter card or look at the cards in your own deck and see, oh, I'm going to draw a treachery or I'm going to draw this terrible monster. Well, that's just not going to happen. I'm just going to cancel it or stuff it somewhere else into the deck. But even that is kind of like a theme meeting gameplay. It's like we're taking the horror that we know exists, and we can't deal with it because it's too powerful for us, but we can delay it. We can try to delay the inevitable. Deck building for all the different investigators in this game has never been more fun for me than it is now, because I've continued to purchase more expansions for this game. I currently have the core set, Dunwich, Carcosa, the Forgotten Age, the Circle Undone, Innsmouth, Edge of the Earth, and maybe one more. Oh, and also Hemlock Vale, too. I most recently finished a Path to Carcosa campaign run, which included my favorite scenario experience ever. Just everything about the scenario was perfect theme meeting gameplay. And I died in that scenario. I was defeated. And the fact that I died and the way I was defeated simply could not be replicated outside of the card-driven systems of this game. So yeah, Arkham Horror, I do think it sort of lives and dies on the campaign encounters because the deck building is already great fun, but I'd basically want to play this game all the time, if I could. Okay, so before we get to my number 1, I do want to give some honorable mentions for games that are really great and I think are superb, fantastic, but I do not want to play them at all right now. And those are Root, Frosthaven, and War of the Ring. 2nd edition. All these games I've played a lot of. I've finished Frosthaven. I've played Root, I don't know how many times, too many times. And I've played War for the Ring only a few times, but every time you play that, there's a lot of setup involved. And all of them, I think, are just great, but they could not get on this list before any of these other games because I'd want to play all these other games before any of those 3. Which again, not to say those are bad games. I love them, but I just don't want to play them right now. Okay, so my number 1 board game, probably just of all time, frankly. I like games that have huge scopes, incredible strategic depth, are really long, but they're long because they really want you to get immersed within them, within their worlds, and games that involve a lot of like military maneuvering. So it should really come as no surprise that my number 1 game of all time is Twilight Imperium. I really enjoy the strategic puzzle of trying to figure out what are all my different opponents trying to do on their turn, because that will inform my diplomacy, my military maneuvering, my trade policy with all these different factions. And all the different factions have their own little unique mechanics on how to play the game and how to interact with the setting. I really enjoy all those different little systems of play. Since I included drafting, the game has become a lot more fun because there's just a lot more novel combinations of galaxies and also factions involved. Where when I first played the base game of TI4, there was a lot of repeating maybe 1 or 2 factions. And I much prefer when everyone kind of has to make the best of what they have. So maybe they have to play a faction they're not particularly strong with. It's such a deep game that I feel like I always learn something new every time I've played it. And I think I've played it probably 30 times, 40 if you just include the vanilla game without the expansion. And I crave playing it more. While Twilight Imperium is not based on real-world history, it captures the spirit of geopolitics in the form of alliances, brinksmanship, and shifting power balances in such a way that this game is always such a blast to play with friends. And it makes every game of Twilight Imperium extraordinarily memorable. Something I really like about TI4 is that the game goes in nice, discrete stages, where turn 1 is like the Dark Age in Age of Empires 2, where it's like economic buildup and some exploration. But once you get to round 5 of TI4, the game has like reached this perfect narrative and also gameplay crescendo where everyone is competing for like the last 2 victory points to try to grasp victory from the jaws of defeat. So I really like that. I really like that the tension basically just goes up all the time. There's never a point where it goes down because you are never sure who's going to win. Even when you think the lead guy on like round 4 or 3 can win, something can always change. Hey Ashton, do you want to play TI4?
Right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like 1v1?
Anything.
Anything. Alright, well, I'll play 2 characters. I'll play 2 factions.
Sure.
Yeah, alright, cool. So that here. Or we can play Rebellion. That's also good.
It's a tough choice.
It's a good one.
Twilight Struggle?
That is a Twilight I do not want